Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is the show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Yo, it's like 90 degrees in my apartment. It's after midnight. Brother's hot. Um, anyway, there's a lot going on in the world. Lot of rough stuff going on in the world, and I'm glad you took the time to listen to my podcast. If y'all are interested in my thoughts about some other stuff that's going on, if I get enough comments or whatever, I'll put out like a separate video or whatever on what I think about what's going on in the rioting and looting and all this other stuff. I'll summarize some one thing about it real brief is there's a trifecta of ignorance. There are the ones that are looting, who are being emotional and caught up in rage and pettiness and exploiting a situation, black, white, or indifferent. All that's going to end up happening is the boot of the state's going to be brought down on African Americans' necks harder. There are those on the extreme right that are saying, look, this is what black people do, and even some provocateurs among them that are setting up situations look like, hey, look, there's violent black people, just like we said, and we have to be aware of that. At the same time, we see those that are on the left exploiting this situation for their political movement, using the black face to get socialism and all the changes that they want, not really caring about the community nor the impacts, while they too riot, loot, and defame our communities for what would be our betterment, because they too, just like the masses, do what's better for us. If you don't know this by now, I have no mercy for the modern leftists. I think they're just as racist as the conservatives that they portray, whether it's the racism of low expectations or excessive white guilt that they have to come in and then Superman everybody else without giving people true access to their institutions where they don't have any influence on. But again, that is a whole nother story. That's a whole nother story. So remember back in the day, a couple of years ago, I did do this is political video, and I talked about Let Us Make a Slave. I really recommend that everyone read that, because you can see multitude of philosophical and political ideologies that utilize a lot what's in Let Us Make a Slave by Willie Lynch. It's free. You can read it online, and I refresh myself periodically on that so that I can try to liberate myself from a lot of things in the current system. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. Today's topic is, what do you want the meta to be? What do you want the meta to be? Now, I've gone on 2 shows this week. I'm probably going to go on the third here in probably less than 12 hours. Or 15 hours, less than 15 hours. And I talked on Mr. Clicks Fix, and I was also on 2 Clicks from KO. And where I sort of said on both shows, it's like, look, the top 3 figures in the meta right now are Tri-Sentinel, Immortal Hulk, and most importantly, Chase Widow. Now, everything else sort of shifts out from there. Now, I had a game tonight in which I played a team against double Captain Marvel with Chase Widow with 2 rings, and it was a hard game. Even with one of the guys locally, he's trying to get better. He's trying to improve himself. I told him about the team. He lucked into pulling 2 super rare Captain Marvels, and he lucked into pulling Chase Widow and decided to play it. He took my advice, and I appreciated him for it. And so, because of that, I found myself playing my casual team against him, and I had to utilize everything that I had from his map selection to my placement in utilizing my assets to figure out how to beat the team. Now, no, I would argue that the gentleman is above average player, but he's not a pro. He has a couple of years, and he is improving. But that team was able to push me, a person that's been highly competitive for years. I wouldn't say to the brink, but put me through the paces where I had to make some legitimate, very serious and hard to deal with decisions in that matchup so that I could mitigate the damage that he could do to me and my team. So I could easily, chalk it up and say, "Oh, I'm a great player, harumph for rumph," But in actuality, this guy was his first time playing this team, putting those figures on the board, and I'm not going to hide behind the crutch of saying, "Oh, look, I'm playing this casual team," because I do have some competitive elements in it. But he was able to push me to play a very, very serious, concentrated game. Now, will I also come back and say, well, those figures are just hard to deal with? Yes. But in the format that we're in now, I also was able to compete against that team with a casual team or with utilizing figures that aren't too super popular. And so it allowed me to sort of say, like, look, you can sort of force the meta. Now, understanding there are some grades on some things that you can force, but functionally, the meta is a little bit more wide open than what we're experimenting with. So that's what I'm going to pretty much try to crystallize today. Now, there's a couple of great things that are going down. Number one, people are getting product. Okay, my store got product. They didn't have product up until this week. So people are getting product. So people are going to start getting that Justice League Unlimited goodness in their hands, and they're going to start playing around with it. And they're going to start realizing various different things. And I think one of the first things that people are going to realize, number one, is being plus to theme does matter, but what matters more is that I have a solid mechanic or a series of mechanics in which I'm utilizing and running my team around. I played a newer player today. He well, not a newer player, but a more casual player, and he had 2 figures from WWE and 1 figure from JLU, and he had the WWE boxing ring or wrestling ring, and I talked to him after I beat him later, and I indicated to him, like, look, man, like your ideas are not bad, but your concept of constructing a team isn't going to work because you need these things, and when you have these things, they're functional. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment and we're going to look at the core mechanics of team building and we're going to briefly look at what that is before we go forward and looking about creating the meta. And we're going to just use the basic acronym STOP. There's no ancient Chinese secret here. It's support, telekinesis, outwit, probability, control, perplex. Anyone that has been familiar with the game back on the HC rounds when we actually sat there and talked days will know that STOP is a core, is functionally for the longest time the Philosopher's Stone of early heroclix, definitely pre-carded heroclix. And you utilize STOP so that you could actually know if you had a good team or not, or at least a decent team. Now, as time has progressed, I have modified STOP in support as click manipulation. Can you heal or go back to the part of the dial that you want to? Telekinesis get replaced with transport. Outwit replaced with negation. Perplex with stat manipulation. Prob is with dice manipulation. That's it. Okay, so if you look at that and you break down those concepts that I gave to you, then you can start to easily see some teams that are diamonds in the rough that just need to be refined so that they're stronger and structurally sound. And one of those key elements is, can I get a decent amount of mobility? Like, first off is, how am I going to deploy? And I look at that, going back to WWE, I think WWE gives us a lot of good bases of looking at, like, how am I going to deploy? Or better yet, how am I going to have my figure get into the fray? Now, the only other problem with WWE is after they do grand entrance, their mobility is greatly limited. At least in the first generation of WWE. Who knows? They might have some all over arena fight ability that'll kick in on wave 2 or 3, which allows you to place a WWE figure 4 squares for free every turn. And if you don't attack somebody, take 1 click of damage, something dumb like that, and they'll be 11 clicks deep or something. I don't know. But as you look at WWE fills out a couple of keywords that really needed like some love. Number 1 is martial artist. Number 2 is celebrity. Okay, so celebrity and martial artists are your main ones that you're getting from WWE. I think you might have a warrior in there, maybe. I'm not quite sure. So Sokka's future and martial arts, yeah. Like you have some weird ones like mystical with like Undertaker, and Realms doesn't have one. Oh, there it is. Okay, I was looking at the low point dial. Yeah, like Monster, Andre the Giant is celebrity. Yeah. So you keep looking in. Yeah, like Eddie Guerrero is a warrior. All right, so there are some cool things that you can do. Also, on a slight note, Big Show, Triple H, and Kane are authority, which shares the authority keyword with the actual authority. Now, if you're playing Golden Age, this is hilarious. Just letting you know. But going back is utilizing those generic keywords, you can catch a lot of people off guard because the average individual is not looking for soldier, police, martial artist, or celebrity. And they are decent enough to play, in which you're able to get the drop on them. Having played against a spy team today with the Black Widow and Spy Master combo, I think Spy might have some legitimate issues that it can present to parts of the game. Now, I don't think that it is a catch-all, nor do I think that is unstoppable. I do think that it has potential, and that is the thing that I really want us to look at, is that part of victory right now, more so than before, is practice, familiarity, and also taking the time to making sure that your team is cohesive and has multiple prongs for attack or defense. Okay, so but going back to WWE, is that you're able to pick up WWE figures for relatively inexpensively. I think a lot of the things that they have there are core to the game right now, and you should be able to present a solid option to your locals, and they won't really know what to do if they're just looking at copying what's going on in the online formats, because the online formats are high-level players that have practiced their teams for other high-level players. So if you just, again, try to, Attack of the Clones, the team, without even watching the stream or the video of what went on with that team, then you're just going to put yourself at a disadvantage. All right. Next up, I want to present in the concepts of ideas is when you're trying to solve for some of these, bigger concepts or, these things to consider is like, first things first, like what is your goal with the current meta? Like, what are you trying to solve? Or better yet, are you setting up a trap? Are you trying to pick every lock? Are you trying to hit the opponent's team with a sledgehammer? Or are you trying to deconstruct former tactics that work? So, for example, of deconstructing tactics that worked, I was looking at Daniel Powell. He was playing in some tournament, and functionally, I realized he just deconstructed Unimind. And so he had an Avengers, I think it was an Avengers hard to kill team. And I think he had a Cap, I think he had a Captain Marvel super rare, and I think he had the Captain Marvel chase, and I think he had something else. But the idea is that you're going to spend a lot of time trying to pop these figures, and by the time you finally do, you're going to invest a lot of energy. Like, it's going to be a slugfest. And why I say is by deconstructing Unimind is once Unimind pops, then look, here's the pinata, but here you have to pop the other parts of the pinata. So you're going to, if you pop Steve Rogers, then you're going to have to do it again, and then once you do it again, then you're going to have to pop Peggy. If you fail to do all of that, you're going to be behind on points. If you go and try to kill and pop Captain Marvel, he will come back, and he's going to bring back that Steve Rogers, and that Steve Rogers, if it did got popped, is going to get a second breath of life where you have to pop him again. So it creates a very strong mechanic to deal with, and even more so the people that poo-pooed Chase Captain Marvel, the Earth X Captain Marvel, other than Caleb Reddick. Shout out to your boy. But realistically, we're looking at a situation in which a certain style of play becomes a player, and they look for the outlook, but no one was really looking at a Avengers theme hard to kill, even though it's been there for a while. Now you take away IDs, you take away Unimind, you take away some of the Star Trek, take away some of the, not Star Trek, take away some of the Colossal Retaliators, and then all of a sudden things start to unravel, and you start to see that these boxes that we were in for a long period of time start to break away, because free burst damage is no longer possible. And I am talking about ID cards. And even more so, free burst damage, free utility, and free call-in retail is no longer available. So now we have another issue that comes on, is the have retails and the have not retails. And the have retails gives some distinct advantage, in my opinion, to X-Men. And X-Men Robot Mystical, Hellfire Club, I think also Armor, because of Colossus, and also Iceman. You are now looking at a influx of figures that are now able to put, influx of keywords that now are distinctly exclusive unless you're going to, again, not play theme. So let's go through that and assess that value. So first and foremost, like I said, Tri-Sentinel, and the most common things you're going to see is Hellfire Club, Mystical, Robot, and Sentinel. Like, all of those theme keywords got boosted because Tri-Sentinel exists still. Okay, Proteus is something that I think that people will sleep on. Unfortunately, both green and orange Proteus are there. Phoenix, just standard Phoenix, not just Dark Phoenix, but Phoenix. Like, she has Cosmic, Excalibur, Phoenix Force, Starjammers, X-Men. That's a lot. That's a lot of utility right there. Again, let's see. Iceman, Armor got a bump. Champions, which I think also included some of those newer kids. I don't know if they got the Champions keyword or not. Give me a brief second. Champions, yeah, Ironheart. There's a Falcon. Yeah, there's not too many champions. The Miles and Gwen are also champions. So, but yeah. That in and of itself is an issue. But going back, we can see that. Let me get the retail back. All right, so like I said, Proteus, Iceman, We also have Dark Phoenix again with, your Hellfire Club and it being really useful. And I think they took away, yeah, I don't think there's any DC retaliation right now, and that doesn't mean there won't be, but I just don't see any. Really, I take that back. The equivalent is Micron. So if you go and look at Micron, and there's multiple ways of playing Micron, but when you look at Micron, he has Future Keyword and also Justice League, and it says. And if Micron is Colossus symbol, place him adjacent to opposing character that damaged another friendly character since your last turn, so be functionally just used as Colossal Retaliation. This action is free instead of a friendly character. Free instead if that friendly character was KO'd. Now, while Micron is Justice League, and he's also Future, it gives a great boost to Justice League because they also have retaliation, which, in all fairness, can easily be co-opted by Avengers using Steve Rogers. So they could also get access to a retaliation. So that is something that I would want us to sort of keep in mind. That Steve Rogers does open up the use of Micron for Colossal Retaliation for Avengers teams. So just don't think that it's best to play Vulture or there's no other option but a set limited number of figures like Isaac for Avengers teams to adapt. Micron is more than likely going to replace Vulture on a lot of these Avengers teams for his usefulness for Colossal Retaliation due to Steve Rogers. Now, like I said, your boy is hot. I've been doing this 22 minutes with no fan, trying to do this with no background noise. Oh gosh, it's hitting me rather hard. But going back to X-Men and Dark Phoenix Saga, when we start, continually looking at our retaliators. Like I said, we already had Phoenix. All right, we have Magneto. Magneto is good for Alkali's Brotherhood of Mutants, Hellfire Club, and Ruler. So again, another generic keyword that gets a hand up because it has access to Colossal Retaliation. Then, like I said, Colossus, I think he's Brute, Mystical, and X-Men, so he's not armor. But Iceman is armor. All right. Yeah. So Dark Phoenix is, Cosmic, Hellfire Club, Phoenix Force, and X-Men. So I think Storm is Deity, Monster, Ruler, X-Men, and then of course Iceman is Armor, Champions, Defenders, X-Factor, X-Men. So what we see is a lot of keywords, a lot of generic keywords have access to Colossal Retaliation if you take the time to do the investment. And I think Atlas also, he is a form of Colossal Retaliation, and he has Masters of Evil and Thunderbolt, so he's not as universal to use. But he's not horrible. I don't think he's Rainbow Magic great, but I do think he is not horrible. So all of a sudden, we're in this point where a lot of the theme team understanding is changing. Okay, so previously, you needed plus, 8. Well, not so much now. There are solid theme teams that are +3, +4, +5 that are able to concentrate a good amount of power. I also think, we're going to see the rise of POG teams once again, primarily because either teams are going to have access to retaliation and they want a way to ensure downfield deployment of said retaliation with minimal risk as possible, but at the same time producing a situation in which the individual can maximize distance as an advantage, even though they're on the other side of the map, or even though I would say this, they don't have a good part of their build invested into it. So, for example, if you're just going to go Pog spam, you could run you can run Isaac, and then you can run Jason Wyngarde. Now it's almost half of your build, but not quite. Okay, you're under half of your build. Here, spam this stuff. Let's go. Okay, spam these Pogs. You have these sets of Pogs down here that are that their main role is to support you in this way, and you're sending down constantly this other Pog just to provide pressure. I also like Machine Smith outside of Jason Wyngarde because the Machine Smith Pog, you just go ahead and utilize your opponent's strength to your advantage. Now note there are some disadvantages with that, and one of which is, there's a lot of powerful figures that use special powers, but again, that's part of being adaptable. So again, access to Colossal Retaliation is a thing, but you might say, Dark Logos, man, I want to play these other keywords, and I won't have access to Colossal Retaliation. The first thing that I would ask you is, how are you going to get out there and reach out and touch somebody's hand and make this world a better place if you can? Everybody that lived in the 80s probably heard that song like one too many times in elementary school. But when we look at the benefits of high mobile teams or teams that have other ways of reaching downfield, then we can start concocting some different understandings. Now note, the shifting focus widows do cause some shenanigans and problems with some of this logic, but realistically, when we're looking at the game overall in general, there are some distinct teams that, I gotta be honest, actually have some potential. Now, I don't know why Realms is jacking with me. Okay, go Modern Age. Okay, range. Oh, sorry. Range is greater than. Okay, so that's why. All right, range is greater than 8. I typed the wrong thing in. So, okay, so when we start looking to utilize range greater than 8, there's a couple of things that I think we should be mindful of. First off, is that long range game has always been in the game. Okay, it's always been in the game. Now, the question is what is it tied to? And classically, it was tied to TK yo-yos and running shots and all this other stuff. Now, you can decide to do that in some situations, but I'm not saying it's always the best idea to do that. So first and foremost, I think one of your main 8 rages that people need to come back and evaluate realistically is Trick Shot. He's just too good for 50 points. I'm sorry. He is that good. I feel like we should see a lot more consideration for Trick Shot. And I know some folks will be like, we just kill him. I'm like, remake a ring. Come on. It's not that hard. Okay. Arno Stark is another good pickup. Chase Ultron, I think, is a figure, in my opinion, that really should never really drop in value, definitely in the current format. I also will promote Stealth Sentinel and Cyclops Sentinel have greatly overperformed for me as a player. Then again, we go back to Jason Wyngarde, and we can see why he performs well. Sort of skipping down, I want to go and talk about Astronomer, and I know Astronomer was like the hotness last year when ABPI came out, but I realistically have to point out that Astronomer's flexibility and his low point cost, even when you invest that extra 5 points in for a gem, allows him to adapt to more matchups than I think the average person is aware. And because of his flexibility, I think in the current format, yes, he is not as mobile as some other great figures, but you don't necessarily need him to be hypermobile, because most of the teams that Astronomer would face are going to come to him because all you really need is a TK. And once you utilize that TK and your opponent realizes that you can reach out and touch them, they're going to come to you mighty quick. So there's that. And you have to consider that. So I would definitely say, if you were forgotten about Astronomer, you better recognize and you better remember, because again, this is, fundamentals of like range. Kobik is still good. Kobik, in my opinion, causes the individual still to think about control and utilize a massive amount of control with the blue cube. So there are a few others that I definitely would put some emphasis on. On the DC side, I would say, hey, Starro is not dead. Yes, Jason Wyngarde is a little bit better and a little bit cheaper, but Jason Wyngarde without a Jean Grey is a little bit rougher sell. It's not an impossible sell, but it is a little bit rougher, and it requires a lot more sweating the technique, if you will, than anything else. So let's keep going. There is some good news when you start looking at that, the Superman, 175 point Superman, but still, like, I would rather spend those points on Astronomer. Okay, so when we started talking about those theme teams, it's like, all right, how can I get that long range? How can I get out there and just tap my opponent from a good distance and cause them to be just a tad bit frustrated in this situation? And so those are things for us to think about. Now note, just because you have that range does not mean that you're untouchable. All it means is that your opponent will have to make up the gap. And so in the current stream of things, we go back and we look at, who is doing that. And I would make the argument, Pixie is doing that. Then it's one of the other gems that gives you Passenger. I think it is Space Gem. Space Gem, modify your speed by +1, phasing, teleport, and Passenger 2. Yeah, so Space Gem is also another good thing that allows you to compensate for some of your weaknesses there in terms of transportation. Now, no, having a Eternal that starts with it, or having a character that starts with an equip of the gem, is a lot better than trying to equip it and then trying to get an excessive amount of tempo. So you need to be mindful of, like, is my team you're coming to me team, or is my team reach out and touch somebody's hand team? Knowing the difference in between the two is the matter of victory or defeat. So in my second round, again, against the spy team gentleman, he had a come and get to me team. I had an ability to reach out and touch him. Okay. And he did not think that was possible. And I was just like, look, I know you designed your team to be a certain way, but I also designed my team so that I can, control the flow of the game. As I listened to one commentator on the element of cinema and anime, he said, what becomes the problem with the modern hero is that functionally, if you think about it, the modern hero is almost the antagonist and the villain is the protagonist, because the villain is the one that has agency and the hero does not. The hero is not ever allowed to be compelled to do something or to take action. The hero is usually reacting to something. And so, if you could say it like I took on the role of the villain, is to be able to initiate action is always going to be good. Now, I understand from the defensive mindset as well, because I'm primarily a defensive player, that being able to prevent action is also important. But if you're not able to resolve the game, it creates a massive amount of problems. And if you're hoping that your opponent is just going to stumble into your trap. That creates a massive amount of problems. You have to apply force to make your opponent come in and attack you. Okay? If you do not have anything to make your opponent come in and attack you, there's going to be enough people that says, like, I don't like your team. It's crappy. I'm going to sit here and we're going to go to time. Let's talk about something else. Okay? So that becomes a frustration. Okay? So again, like I said, you need to find something within your team design to make sure that your opponent has a reason to come and engage you if you're one of those sitting in the starting area teams. You have to be able to reach out and touch them globally through some other mechanism, whether that's, you know, a couple of pogs or even a couple of hard to kill figures, and just be like, yo, I'm yeeting these downfield and I got 3 retaliators ready to go. And I still got a force ready to follow up behind them. What you gonna do? And that creates a massive problem for your opponent. A massive problem for your opponent, because now they have to deal with the impending threat of losing few points or being hindered in their ability to make an answer to your action. And that is a big deal. Now let's go back. And let's sort of add some like little fun in there, okay? Because God forbid we have some fun, you know what I mean? And you start looking at Star Trek, and I love me some Star Trek. Like I've had some of the greatest conversations with my father, talking about Star Trek and what was being said and digesting the story of Star Trek and Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Next Generation and all this other stuff. So I never cared about the Force until high school, and even then, when my friend showed me Star Wars for the first time, I was like, this is boring. It was like be real, folks. Like, there's a lot of boring in Star Wars getting started, you know. Anyway. So going back before I lose all my viewership, because it's the Trekkie versus Star Wars battle once again. So you end up in this interesting situation when you look at Star Trek. I was about to say Star Wars. Is that Starfleet has a lot, and I do mean a lot, of medium level damage. Not so much, you know, they can't really take a lot of hits. But when you put them together, it's like making your own Voltron. Okay? The only thing that they really lack is the ability to reach, well, three things. Mass transport. They can't really go out there and reach out there and touch somebody. And they don't have retail. Other than that, they are hella broke. Like, most of their components that Starfleet has is by far just a step above. Now, the thing that was sad is that Starfleet's day truthfully was with ID cards, because they could get retaliators. Removing retaliators from Starfleet, just it's a kick in the groin, and then a bat lift to the groin, and then you're left being told there's no gold plus platinum left. It's just gold. And if you're in the Starfleet, Star Trek universe, you understand that joke. Okay. So in the end, could you go and make Starfleet fun? The answer is yes. It would be a B+ team that you could go in there and give a lot of teams a run. But the problem comes in the moment you deal with a highly mobile team. If you're not able to Beverly crush their mobility, unfortunately you're going to lose, because you're going to lose what was it? What's his name? You're probably going to lose a Picard, and you're probably going to lose Wesley Crusher. And then, because you're not mobile enough, you won't be able to get those points back. Now, the weakness I will definitely argue for Starfleet is if you can be mobile or potent, you cannot be both. just due to the massive figures you're going to run. Now, with Starfleet, you can easily say, like, yeah, I'm going to be plus 10 and minimum plus 8, and I'm going to wreck your face. The average casual team will have a huge problem against Starfleet. Whereas I would make the argument that, the pro level team is going to crush a Starfleet team probably about 9 times out of 10. And that 10th time, Starfleet had to really work for it. Now, in your local, Starfleet is fine. And I actually think Starfleet is a good exercise in team building. And I also think Starfleet is a good exercise in placement because you have to be on point with your placement with Starfleet. Now, could you go through and probably make world's level team with Starfleet if you practiced and you figured everything out and all this other stuff? Possibly, who knows at this stage. But I will say your amount of work that you're going to apply in decision making is going to be draining. Now you go back and you look at something like Masters of Evil. That is like C grade dumpster fire, and most of the time. And even then, you're still trying to marry things to Thunderbolts so that you can get a couple of more better options to just rub your back as you try to go through and play with it. I'm sorry, they just did not play test that well. That was not play tested well. Now, I would also argue in that same sort of vein, but maybe a slight step above, is Wakanda. Queen Shuri and Queen Storm have made Wakanda Forever a lot better and a lot more annoying. But I think Wakanda also faces that similar problem of they are very positional in their gimmick about come to me. And they have a few mechanics that would allow you to reach out there and touch someone. Unfortunately, those mechanics do not work with each other. Okay, so my prime example is Okoye. The main set of Okoye's Rhino is great, but it does not work with Earth X Black Panther's Pogs, nor does it work with Prime Black Panther's Pogs as a method of transport. Okay, so you can't really harass your opponent because the Rhino only can carry characters with the Wakandan keyword, and the Pogs do not have the keyword, thus putting them at a disadvantage. So, Wakanda in the new format could bode a lot better. Now, again, they still fear a bunch of different things. They still fear Tri-Sentinel in spite of having Cosmic Panther. And they definitely fear Dark Phoenix. Okay? AVX happened for a reason, folks. So they still fear Dark Phoenix. But most of the other retals, they just sort of clap them. Like, real fast. And I think that that's something to look at or even examine. So could you push your local venue, and win some tournaments, like playing Wakanda, playing Elders of the Universe, playing some, even X-Men. I hate to admit it. I might have to, for the 8th time, reevaluate X-Men after, some things that I've said today. Because it's so easy to think of life with the Quinjet. All right, so I've taken away the Quinjet. I mean, not the Quinjet, the Blackbird and the IDs. So all that stuff is retired. What do I have next that's useful so that I can move the team forward? Well, you have Pixie, you have Quicksilver, you have Scarlet Witch. And I know those are all the things from the WKO earlier this year, but they are functionally good. They're not broken, they're good. Could you look at those concepts and build around them? The Cable, with him having his Cable clones. Can you build around that? Another element for you to think about is, how are you going to utilize Colossus Super Rare? And maybe running 2 of them and just bodyguarding some major players and figuring out how to leverage that. So there are some things that we have to consider. And I know we're approaching an hour, and I'm going to wrap this up in just a bit. But the first thing that we have to consider, number one, is there's not a lot. You're either picking high quality and fewer figure amount, or high volume, massive figure amounts. And I know you're listening to me, it's like, well, duh, like that's the whole purpose of the two. But in particular, when you look at the double Captain Marvel Chase Widow, you're investing in three distinct pieces that are high quality. Whereas when you're looking at Star Trek, you're investing in probably eight pieces that are okay and they do one thing well. Okay, so they'll do that one thing well. Like you run Thomas the Train, right? And if you don't know the slang, it's Thomas Riker. Okay, so that's Thomas the Train. You run Thomas the Train gimmick, it's not that impossible to do Thomas the Train with a Star Trek build and make it rather dumb. It's so easy. But can you beat Double Captain Marvel? The answer is no. I don't think you can. Okay? I think you can probably take one down. I think you can bring, a lot of problems to that team. But realistically, if you're telling me that I can beat double Captain Marvel, I'm sorry. Like if you did it, you played well. I'm not going to even insult the other person. You played well. Okay? So, you have to evaluate like a lot of things. Like the next thing I would say is start looking at some keywords that you haven't looked at before, like those generic keywords that I looked at, and then start thinking to yourself, it's like, all right, like what's really there? And I do my research and I do some reading and I, I won't front. I don't do as much as I used to because of my job and even mentoring some kids and whatnot. I don't do as much of the hard lifting as I used to. And to be honest, I listen a lot to my team members and my teammates. No front. Not even on front about it. Okay? But in that process of doing your own evaluation, like go back and look at some things and just like, all right. Like even for me right now, it's like, I really don't like Rebirth. What was cost effective? What really did work? Why did it work? Like I will still vouch for 50-point Nightwing. Okay, he is good. All right, he's really good. But the question comes in is, can I play him with Titans? Can I play him with Batman Family? Can I play him with martial artists? Oh, hey, martial artist. I didn't see you there. Hey, what is it you got there, Nightwing? Leadership and free, choose one, close combat expert, range combat expert, perplex, or outwit. That's pretty useful. Now, it does suck that he has a 4 range and he doesn't have Indom. Okay. But that's not bad. Like, I will also be honest, playing a Golden Age game, Duke Thomas was a excellent figure. That proved to have some level of utility in terms of boosting attack output and going back to that stat manipulation. You might say, hey, I really don't hate Super Dash Man. Is he a good idea at 75 points? And I would argue he's not horrible. Okay? Now going back to celebrity, or martial artist, he's not horrible. Is he rainbow magic great? No. And therein lies the rub. Okay, therein lies the rub on things. Is making sure knowing how you're going to compensate with some of these figures. Some of these figures are top tier. Some of these figures are not still. But just go through and just get inspired. Okay, I click Phobos for some reason. Okay, opposing characters within 4 squares can't automatically break away and decrease the result of their breakaway roll by -1. Okay, so guess what? I can now tie up Colossus. Does that matter for you? Do you have a plan for this? If not, Let it go. Sons of Ares. Son of Ares. Unique modifier. If Phobos is within 4 squares of a friendly character named Demos, modify both their attack by +1. Okay. Not bad. But we look at his stats, and you start to see his stats are piss poor, and he doesn't have Indom. Okay. Not that good. But you can start just doing this inventory. And oh, here's Superboy. Okay, 75 points. Now he's doing better than the Superman. Is it because of the rarity or whatever else? Okay, he has Kryptonian Metropolis. And he's also Teen Titans. All right. Oh, look, what does he have here? This magical slash thing. Oh, that's Indom. Oh, he has a 14 movement, which means he has a 7 move charge. That's pretty good. 11 attack, 4 damage. Okay, he doesn't start off with super strength, but maybe I could put exospecs on him, and he's a lot more respectable. Or maybe I can even dare think about giving him hypersonic speed from exospecs. That might actually be pretty good, which would give increased value to him. Oh, okay. So let's take a brief moment, and again, I'm just trying to show you what I'm thinking. Let's take this brief moment. Let's look at Teen Titans. All right. Let's see what's still legal. All right. We get Static and Speedy from Justice League Unlimited, so they're not bad. We also have access to Tempest, who isn't horrible. Not the best. Not horrible, though. We have Raven, and she's good. And we also have Starfire, and she is great. At 100 and at 50, she's great. Okay, so then we notice that, all right, we're cut off at Wonder Woman set. Oh, well, that sucks. Okay, so the only Teen Titans that we have are within those 2 sets, and then we also have Impulse, Static from the con exclusive, the Robin. There's a Robin prize support, I think, and there is a Bat Cycle. Okay. What says that Bat Cycle from? Oh, what is that Bat Cycle from? Oh, Robin in the Bat Cycle. Yeah, okay, never mind. Yeah, so you have those 2 things right there. All right, so now I can say is like, hey, look, Teen Titans, I have access to the Bat Cycle. And again, like I said, like we can come across some cool stuff. What is it worth for me to put someone into the Bat Cycle, like Ravager or Superboy? Put Superboy in the Bat Cycle. Like, get creative. And then you go into locals and folks will be like, haha, what's that? And then you can just be like, it's just something I was working on. And then you could just be super annoying because you perplexed up the Superboy getting inside the Bat Cycle, and now it's hitting for 5 damage with hypersonic speed without you having to equip. Simple things like that. You could take time and examine some other very, very good pieces and just say like, all right, this is how I feel. Ooh. Yes, bad singing on my part. But you get the gist. You can break it down. You can go and do this with whatever other keyword that you're looking at, but just take time to experiment because it's like Bob Ross. There's happy little mistakes, and there are teams that I think out there that people just don't know exist because they're so preoccupied playing the quote-unquote best things because folks said they were the best things. And they don't question it because, you got to pay your taxes like me or do 80 other things. And it just doesn't come together, So, there you go. All right, so that's pretty much it. I would encourage you all to take time and look at the results from some of these tournaments, but just please, please, please don't be married to the results thinking that that's all there is and that's the game right now, because it's not. It's truthfully not. There are a lot of good ideas that are being overlooked for the sake of dare I say, convenience. And I know for myself, there are several teams that I can't wait to like put on the board physically because I own it. And there's the loudest motorcycle I've heard in a long time. It's 1:30 in the morning. But anyway, and there's other things that I know for myself for fun that if I go to my local venue and and I show them like, look, man, I'm not stunting on you. I'm not trying to prove that I'm hot stuff, but I just won with, Ironheart, or I just played a Teen Titans theme team, but because my fundamentals are sound and my placement is sound, and I knew what type of controls I had, what type of offense I was running, I was able to win. Okay. So I know there's probably some more archetypes I could go into, like, are tempos viable? Yes, no, maybe. Are we in an age where colossal size figures are going to be offensive? Is that just going to be the dominance? I can even go so far to say is like, what really is, a Justice League team? Tell me in the comments what you want to hear. Like I said before, I have some stuff going down with school. Summer school is finished up. I know for some folks like that's not an excuse. Give us our product. But there's that. I'm cleaning up the apartment. I'm growing my plants. And I'm fighting pests in my plants, and it's frustrating. It makes me slightly angry. And even finding out, with my tomatoes, look, man, I invested a lot of time in my tomatoes, and I have pots that are too small. If I was trying to get any sort of fruit off of it, I need to get bigger pots, and now I'm back to like space problems and light problems. So yeah, like I have a lot of things like I personally have to like reassess and like rebuy things, and it sucks. But this is one of those things that it comes with being adult. It comes with being a man, is accepting responsibility for your actions, and dealing with your commitments, and going back and buying clicks. Like I dropped $100 on clicks. I was just like, gosh, I've been dropping like $300-400 on stocks, and I'm seeing the returns, and I'm cringing because I'm looking at that $100 in like a different light. I bought both of the Justice League starter and the Fantastic Four starter, and I also bought the little bike with the Black Widow bike. I bought in the the Pog set, and it's just like, oh gosh, this just hurts. But I support my local store, in that sense. But at the same time, I'm just like, oh, like I would spend that much and get almost all my commons, uncommons, and maybe even a couple of super rares that I want. So there's some, like I said, there's some things that even myself personally, like taking some inventory. Like I'll be 38 this year, and I look at some of my investments in life, and I have a lot of human capital. I don't necessarily have a ton of economic capital, and I'm trying to leverage that. So there's some things that you take stock of. I know some people have a lot of economic capital and not have a lot of personal capital, and you leverage what you leverage. But I am thankful for you all listening. So you can follow me on Twitter at StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me, man, you need to lay off the pie. Your stomach is getting too big. Then you can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it wholesome, baby. Let me know what you think of the analysis of the current meta, at least your personal viewpoint. And if you want to donate, you can go over to startingoverpodcast.blogspot.com. On there is a PayPal link. You just donate there. I know in the age of Patreon, everybody's used to be like, we want the benefits, and I get that. But the main reason I don't do Patreon is one for political reasons. They kicked off a couple of people that I liked just because they were not left enough. And then the other thing is, I don't want someone to come back and say, hey, he doesn't think this certain way, we're going to put him on a list and deny him his money. I'm pro free speech. I'm pro open ideas and confronting open ideas. And I believe the moment that, you stop making arguments and it's nothing but making fun of each other, that you've already lost. And you've also proven that your point is invalid, that you've been defeated even though you don't admit it. And so I do not like Patreon. Now, again, you don't have to share my politics. I really don't require that. Nor have I begged for donations like hard in years since the time I was unemployed. But if you want to donate to the show, it's there. Like I said, I don't front. Everything does go back into the show. Like, I've gotten a better camera thanks to you guys. I've gotten a better mobile camera to take out there thanks to you all. And yeah, so there you go. So that's it. I know, again, it's been a while since the episode, but buddy, school kicked my butt. So I will check you later. And remember, we all have to start